The Japanese soldier advances through the monsoon rain at 0300 hours. April 6, 1944. He moves silently up the terrace slope toward the deputy commissioner's bungalow at Kohima. Lieutenant Shosaku Kamiyama, 23rd Infantry Regiment, 31st Division, has not eaten in 4 days. His unit's supply line stretches 140 miles behind him through Burmese jungle. Severed at multiple points by British interdiction, the ammunition pouch on his belt contains 7 rounds for his Arisaka rifle. The grenade hanging from his webbing represents his last explosive. 50 yards ahead, the bungalow looms in darkness, inside and around it. Approximately 350 men of the 2nd Battalion, Royal West Kent Regiment hold positions they have defended for 9 days. They possess food for 3 more days, ammunition for perhaps 2. Water supplies depend on a single well within the defensive perimeter. Now under constant Japanese fire, relief forces approach from Dimapur, 30 miles northeast, but face terrain that permits advance of perhaps 2 miles daily. Kamiyama knows none of this. He knows only that his orders require taking this position tonight to open the road to Dimapur and India beyond. He advances. At 40 yards, a flare ignites overhead. Machine gun fire erupts from the bungalow. Kamiyama goes to ground. Around him, 17 other soldiers from his platoon attempt the same. 8 fall in the first 5 seconds. The British gunners fire Lancaster submachine guns and Bren light machine guns in interlocking arcs across the slope. There exists no covered approach. Kamiyama waits 30 seconds until the flare fades, then rushes forward 10 yards. Another flare bursts. He dives behind a low stone wall marking the tennis court boundary. The absurdity registers briefly. He fights for his life beside a tennis court at a British administrative post in the Naga Hills. The machine guns sweep the area again. More soldiers fall. Kamiyama counts 4 men still moving. His platoon, which began the attack with 22 men, has lost 18 in 90 seconds. He cannot retreat. Japanese doctrine prohibits withdrawal once attack commences. He cannot advance effectively against the concentrated fire. He remains pinned behind the tennis court wall as dawn approaches. At 0540 hours, British artillery from Jotsoma, 2 miles north, begins ranging fire. The shells explode across the slope. Kamiyama and the other survivors hug the ground. The barrage lasts 11 minutes. When it lifts, Kamiyama attempts to withdraw. He finds 3 other men alive. They crawl downslope through the pre-dawn darkness, leaving 14 bodies on the tennis court terraces. This pattern? Japanese assault followed by devastating defensive fire, followed by artillery bombardment, repeats across Kohima for 16 days. The battle itself represents one component of a larger operation. Japan's attempt to invade India through a 2-pronged offensive striking Kohima and Imphal simultaneously. To understand how these forces met in savage combat across ridgelines and jungle valleys, you must return to January 1944. The Japanese 15th Army, commanded by Lieutenant General Renya Mutaguchi, occupies positions in Burma along the Chindwin River. Mutaguchi plans Operation U-Go, a 3-division thrust into India targeting Imphal, the capital of Manipur State, and Kohima, the administrative center of Nagaland. The objectives include destroying British Indian forces in the region, severing the supply route to China, and potentially triggering Indian revolt against British rule. The plan reflects optimism bordering on delusion. Mutaguchi's 3 divisions, totaling approximately 85,000 men, must advance through 150 miles of mountain jungle during the approaching monsoon season. The terrain features ridgelines reaching 7,000 feet elevation, river valleys impassable during rain, and vegetation so dense that visibility rarely exceeds 50 yards. The logistical plan assumes Japanese forces will capture British supplies at Imphal and Kohima within 3 weeks, before monsoon rains make supply lines completely impassable. British intelligence detects preparations but misjudges timing and scale. Lieutenant General William Slim, commanding 14th Army, expects a Japanese offensive but anticipates smaller-scale attacks designed to disrupt Allied operations rather than major invasion. His dispositions reflect this assessment. 4th Corps, under Lieutenant General Jeffrey Scoons, holds Imphal with 3 divisions. The Kohima garrison comprises a single weak brigade, approximately 1,500 men under Colonel Hugh Richards. The Japanese advance begins March 8, 1944. 31st Division under Lieutenant General Kotoku Sato drives toward Kohima. 15th Division under Lieutenant General Masafumi Yamauchi attacks Imphal from the south. 33rd Division under Lieutenant General Motoyoshi Yanagita assaults Imphal from the north. Initial progress proves rapid. Japanese forces, moving cross-country through terrain British planners considered impassable, outflanked defensive positions and advanced toward objectives. The 31st Division's march toward Kohima covers 120 miles through mountains and jungle in 18 days. The soldiers carry rations for 3 weeks, ammunition for initial engagements, and minimal equipment. The division's artillery, unable to traverse the mountain tracks, remains behind. The plan assumes captured British supplies will sustain operations after initial rations exhaust. Division strength at start of march, 15,500 infantry, 4,000 support troops. By April 3rd, when advanced elements reach Kohima's outskirts, division effective strength drops to approximately 13,000 men. The march through mountains during the hot season costs 2,000 casualties, heat exhaustion, disease, accidents, and desertion. The remaining forces arrive exhausted, low on ammunition, and completely dependent on tenuous supply lines stretching back to the Chindwin River. The British garrison at Kohima, designated Kohima Garrison, comprises 2nd Battalion Royal West Kent Regiment, 4th Battalion Royal West Kent Regiment, 1 Assam Regiment, 1 Assam Rifles Battalion, Nepalese troops from 1 Burma Regiment, and various support units. Total strength, approximately 2,500 men. Though dispersed across multiple positions, Colonel Richards concentrates his main force, approximately 1,500 men, in defensive positions around Kohima Ridge, a narrow spur measuring 1,200 yards long and 400 yards wide at maximum. The ridge features several key positions. Garrison Hill at the northern end, where most administrative buildings cluster, the Deputy Commissioner's bungalow and tennis court in the center, Kuki Picket on the southern prominence, and Jail Hill to the southeast. The terrain creates natural defensive positions with steep slopes limiting approach routes, but the positions lack depth. Japanese forces attacking from surrounding heights can bring observed fire onto all defensive positions simultaneously. The siege begins April 5th. Japanese forces, having infiltrated around Kohima during the night of April 4th to 5th, cut the road to Dimapur. The garrison finds itself surrounded. Initial Japanese attacks probed defenses on April 5th, suffering heavy casualties to concentrated defensive fire. Kamiyama's failed assault represents typical results. Attacking forces exposed on open slopes against defenders in prepared positions with plentiful ammunition and artillery support from Jotsoma. But the defensive situation deteriorates rapidly. Japanese artillery, though limited, includes several mountain guns that manage the approach march. These weapons begin systematic bombardment of the ridge positions. Japanese snipers infiltrate to within 100 yards of British trenches, picking off exposed personnel. More critically, Japanese forces interdict the water supply, the garrison's only reliable water source. A well near the Deputy Commissioner's bungalow falls under direct fire. Collecting water becomes a deadly task performed during darkness. At 1300 hours on April 7th, 2nd Battalion, Royal West Kent Regiment holds positions around Garrison Hill and the Deputy Commissioner's bungalow. Battalion strength, approximately 440 men from original 580. Casualties during the first 3 days, 93 killed or wounded, 47 evacuated due to disease or injury. Ammunition expenditure exceeds resupply capacity. The battalion quartermaster, Captain John Randall, calculates remaining stocks. .303 ammunition for Lee Enfield rifles, approximately 40 rounds per man. Bren gun ammunition, approximately 500 rounds per gun. Grenades averaging 3 per man. Mortar bombs for 2-inch mortars, approximately 8 rounds per tube. These numbers, calculated against the intensity of Japanese attacks, suggest ammunition exhaustion within 4 to 6 days at current consumption rates. But resupply proves nearly impossible. Japanese forces control all ground approaches. Air supply drops, attempted by RAF Dakota transport aircraft, achieve limited success. The small drop zones, obscured by smoke from burning buildings and complicated by high terrain surrounding the ridge, cause many supply bundles to fall into Japanese-held territory. Of 80 supply drops attempted between April 6th and April 12th, approximately 38 land within British perimeters. Food supplies face similar constraints. The garrison begins rationing on April 6th, 1 meal daily. supplemented by whatever successful supply drops provide. Water rationing proves more severe. Each man receives approximately 1 pint daily for all purposes: drinking, cooking, treating wounds. This quantity, in tropical heat during intense combat, proves grossly inadequate. Dehydration casualties mount. The medical situation deteriorates catastrophically. The regimental aid post, located in a bunker near Garrison Hill, treats wounded under constant Japanese fire. The battalion medical officer, Captain David Menzies, performs surgery using minimal anesthetic, limited bandages, and improvised instruments. Wounded accumulate faster than evacuation proceeds. By April 9th, the aid post holds 82 wounded in space designed for 20. Conditions prove appalling. No running water, minimal lighting, temperatures exceeding 90 degrees Fahrenheit, and constant artillery fire. Menzies performs amputations using only local anesthetic and rum. He treats sucking chest wounds with improvised chest seals made from cellophane ration packaging and adhesive tape. He operates on abdominal wounds, knowing the patients will likely die from infection regardless of surgical outcome. He works 18 to 20 hours daily, sleeping briefly on the floor between casualties. On April 10th, a Japanese shell scores direct hit on the aid post. The explosion kills 6 wounded men instantly and wounds Menzies and 2 orderlies. Despite his injuries, shrapnel in his left arm and legs, Menzies continues operating. He has no choice. The other medical personnel consist of 2 orderlies, neither trained for surgery. Menzies treats wounded continuously for the next 4 days with minimal sleep and no treatment for his own wounds beyond basic field dressing. The fighting intensifies daily. Japanese attacks, initially probing actions testing defenses, escalate to sustained assaults against specific positions. The pattern becomes predictable. Japanese artillery bombardment lasting 15 to 30 minutes, followed by infantry assault under cover of mortar fire and grenades. British defenders respond with rifle and machine gun fire, artillery support from Jotsoma when weather permits, and counterattacks to reclaim lost positions. The Deputy Commissioner's bungalow changes hands repeatedly. On April 11th, Japanese forces storm the position at 0400 hours, overwhelming the defenders through numerical superiority and grenade attacks. 23 British soldiers die defending the building. 31 withdraw to positions 50 yards north. At 0900 hours, a counterattack by Assam Regiment troops retakes the bungalow. Casualties: 14 killed, 9 wounded. The position holds for 18 hours until another Japanese assault at 0300 hours on April 12th forces withdrawal. This battle, for a single building measuring approximately 60 feet by 40 feet, consumes 137 lives, 43 British Indian, 94 Japanese. Over 3 days, the tactical value proves minimal. The building offers marginal defensive advantage and no strategic significance, but neither side can disengage. Japanese doctrine demands continuing attack until victory or annihilation. British defenders cannot yield any position without compromising the entire perimeter. The tennis court, lying immediately south of the bungalow, becomes particularly deadly ground. The flat court surface, approximately 80 feet by 40 feet, provides no cover. Surrounding terraces offer firing positions with clear fields of fire across the court. Both sides occupy trenches along the court boundaries, separated by distances measuring 20 to 40 feet. Combat occurs at ranges where soldiers see their opponents' faces clearly. At 1500 hours on April 13th, Private John Harmon, 2nd Battalion Royal West Kent Regiment, single-handedly attacks a Japanese machine gun position on the southern edge of the tennis court. The position has caused numerous casualties over previous days. Harmon crawls to within 30 yards, then charges directly at the position firing a Bren gun from the hip. He kills the 4-man crew, dismantles the machine gun, and carries it back to British lines. He returns to the position twice more, retrieving ammunition and personal effects from dead Japanese soldiers. On his 4th approach, a Japanese sniper shoots him through the chest. He dies within minutes. Posthumous award. Victoria Cross. Harmon's action, while eliminating one threat, illustrates the desperate nature of fighting at Kohima. Individuals perform extraordinary actions to address tactical problems that superior resources would solve routinely. The British garrison lacks troops for coordinated assaults, artillery ammunition for sustained bombardment, and replacement personnel for accumulating casualties. Solutions require individual initiative, often at fatal cost. Japanese forces face identical constraints with worse consequences. Their supply situation, precarious at battle commencement, collapses entirely by mid-April. The division's supply line from the Chindwin River requires porters carrying supplies on foot through 150 miles of mountain jungle. Monsoon rains, beginning April 10th, transform tracks into impassable mud. British air attacks destroy supply dumps. Malaria incapacitates porters. By April 15th, Japanese forces at Kohima receive approximately 1/5 of required supplies. Food deliveries drop to negligible levels. Soldiers subsist on whatever they capture, forage, or do without. The division veterinary officer, Captain Jiro Minami, later testifies that horse meat from pack animals becomes primary protein source after April 12th. By April 20th, all horses are slaughtered. Soldiers then eat leather equipment, tree bark, and vegetation of any kind. Ammunition shortages prove equally severe. Infantry small arms ammunition, estimated to last 3 weeks at planned consumption rates, exhausts in 11 days of actual combat. Soldiers receive orders to conserve ammunition. Fire only at certain targets. Engage in close combat with bayonets and grenades when possible. Collect British ammunition from battlefield casualties. These directives prove increasingly difficult as starvation weakens soldiers beyond effective combat capability. Medical support deteriorates catastrophically. The division medical service, always minimal by Western standards, proves completely inadequate. Japanese military doctrine emphasizes offensive spirit over logistical preparation. Medical facilities receive low priority and resource allocation. The 31st Division deploys with approximately 40 doctors for 15,000 men. By mid-April, disease and combat casualties reduce the medical staff to 23 doctors for forces still numbering approximately 10,000 effectives. The wounded receive minimal treatment. Morphine supplies exhaust by April 18th. Surgical supplies run critically low. Antibiotics, never plentiful in Japanese service, become unavailable. Doctors perform amputations without anesthetic, treat infected wounds with boiled water only, and rely on soldiers' endurance for pain management. Many wounded, knowing treatment remains impossible, commit suicide rather than endure suffering. The siege continues through April as relief forces advance from Dimapur. 2nd British Division, under Major General John Grover, drives south along the road toward Kohima. Progress proves agonizingly slow. Japanese forces establish roadblocks at every defensible position. The terrain permits only narrow front attacks. Artillery support, though substantial, achieves limited effect against dispersed Japanese positions in thick jungle. At Jotsama, 2 miles north of Kohima, British forces establish a forward base supporting the Kohima garrison. Supply drop stage from Jotsama. Artillery batteries position here, providing fire support. Relief units concentrate before attempting to break through to Kohima Ridge, but Japanese forces block the connecting road at multiple points. Clearing these positions requires methodical attacks, each consuming days. The garrison, meanwhile, contracts its perimeter as casualties mount and positions become untenable. Kuki Picket falls on April 15th after Japanese infiltration makes the position indefensible. Jail Hill holds until April 17th when ammunition exhaustion forces withdrawal. By April 20th, the garrison holds only Garrison Hill and a small area around the Deputy Commissioner's bungalow, now little more than rubble. The breakthrough occurs April 18th. 2nd British Division's lead elements, 1st Battalion Royal Berkshire Regiment, fight through the final Japanese roadblock and link with the Kohima garrison at 1700 hours. The siege, 14 days duration, ends. The garrison, reduced from 1,500 effective strength to approximately 600 unwounded, evacuates to Jotsoma for reorganization. But the battle continues. Linking with the garrison simply changes operational character from siege relief to offensive operations. British forces, now substantially reinforced, attack methodically to clear Japanese forces from Kohima Ridge and surrounding positions. The Japanese, under orders to hold until death, defend each position tenaciously. The fighting shifts to close-quarter combat across minimal distances. At Garrison Hill, British and Japanese trenches lie 5 to 15 yards apart. Soldiers throw grenades into opposing trenches. Snipers engage at 20-yard ranges. Artillery fires at targets 200 yards from friendly positions. Danger close by any standard. Both sides employ flamethrowers, though infrequently due to limited availability. One engagement illustrates the intensity. On April 23rd, 2nd Battalion Dorsetshire Regiment attacks Japanese positions on the ridge's southern slope. The objective: a Japanese strongpoint in a bunker complex measuring approximately 40 yards by 60 yards. British artillery fires preparatory bombardment for 90 minutes. RAF Hurricanes conduct strafing runs. Infantry assault follows immediately after bombardment lifts. The assault begins at 1300 hours. Lead elements advance 50 yards before encountering intense fire from positions apparently untouched by bombardment. The Japanese bunkers, constructed with overhead cover of logs and earth exceeding 4 feet thickness, withstand direct artillery hits. Machine gun positions, mutually supporting, create crossfire killing zones across approach routes. The British assault stalls within 10 minutes. A second assault at 1500 hours achieves similar results. A third attempt at 1700 hours, supported by tank fire from Lee Grant, tanks advancing along the ridge, reaches the bunker perimeter. Close combat ensues. Soldiers fight with grenades, bayonets, entrenching tools, and fists. The combat devolves to individual duels in bunker complexes and connecting trenches. After 40 minutes of close-quarter fighting, British forces secure the position. Casualties: 63 killed or wounded. Japanese casualties: estimated 112 killed, 4 captured wounded. This battle, for a position measuring 60 yards across, consumed 290 lives including Japanese dead found in bunkers sealed during combat. The tactical gain: 60 yards of ridgeline. Strategic significance: negligible. But the cumulative effect of such actions, repeated across weeks, gradually erodes Japanese defensive capability. The fighting continues through May as British forces methodically clear Kohima Ridge. Each position requires similar effort: bombardment, assault, close combat, consolidation. Japanese defenders, starving and increasingly weak, maintain resistance through fanatical determination. Survivors of one position, when overrun, withdraw to the next and continue fighting. No Japanese units surrender intact. Individual soldiers occasionally surrender when wounded too severely to resist or commit suicide. Most fight until killed. By May 13th, British forces secure Kohima Ridge entirely. Japanese forces withdraw southward toward Imphal, having failed to capture their objective. Casualties for the Kohima fighting: British Indian forces approximately 4,000 killed and wounded. Japanese forces estimated 6,000 killed. Unknown wounded evacuated. The disparity reflects British advantages in artillery, air support, and supply. But Kohima represents only one component of the broader battle. At Imphal, 60 miles south, larger forces fight an even more intensive campaign. The Japanese 15th and 33rd Divisions, totaling approximately 50,000 men, surround Imphal beginning March 29th. 4th Corps, with approximately 100,000 British Indian troops, defends the Imphal Plain and adjacent positions. The terrain around Imphal differs substantially from Kohima. The Imphal Plain, measuring approximately 30 miles north to south and 20 miles east to west, provides relatively flat ground surrounded by mountains. Roads cross the plain, allowing mechanized movement and tank operations. The surrounding mountains, ranging from 5,000 to 8,000 feet elevation, dominate the plain, providing observation and firing positions. Japanese strategy envisions encircling Imphal, severing its supply lines, and forcing surrender through starvation and ammunition exhaustion. The plan assumes British forces, cut off and surrounded, will collapse within 3 weeks as supplies exhaust. This assessment proves catastrophically wrong. British preparations, while incomplete, prove far more substantial than Japanese intelligence estimates. Lieutenant General Slim, recognizing the developing threat in mid-March, orders massive supply stockpiling at Imphal. RAF transport aircraft fly continuous supply missions, delivering ammunition, fuel, food, and medical supplies. By early April, Imphal holds stockpiles sufficient for 8 weeks of intense combat. More critically, British forces retain air superiority throughout the battle. RAF and USAAF transport aircraft supply Imphal entirely by air after road links cut. The airlift, averaging 650 tons daily at peak, sustains 100,000 troops and civilian refugees indefinitely. Japanese forces, lacking similar capability, watch their opponents resupplied continuously while their own logistics collapse. The fighting around Imphal develops into multiple battles across diverse terrain. At Nungshigum, a hill mass overlooking Imphal from the north. Japanese forces establish positions threatening the airfields. British forces counterattack April 13th using infantry and tanks in combined arms assault. The battle lasts 4 days. Result: Japanese forces cleared from position. British forces secure airfield approaches. Casualties: British Indian 560 killed and wounded. Japanese estimated 1,200 killed. At Bishanpur, southwest of Imphal, Japanese 33rd Division attacks defensive positions blocking access to the plain. Fighting continues from mid-April through June. The battles involve tank actions, artillery duels, and infantry combat across features named Scraggy and Red Hill. Results prove indecisive tactically but strategically favor British forces. Japanese attacks fail to penetrate defenses while exhausting attacking forces. At Ganglatongbi and Mapao, north of Imphal, Japanese 15th Division attacks attempting to sever the Kohima Road. Initial assaults achieve substantial penetration, reaching within 5 miles of Imphal. British counterattacks, supported by tanks and artillery, contain the penetration. Fighting stabilizes along defensive lines. British forces prepared in March. The pattern across all sectors proves consistent. Japanese forces attack aggressively, achieve initial success against surprise defenders, then face counterattacks by forces with superior artillery and logistics. Japanese forces lack supplies to sustain offensive operations. British forces, continuously resupplied by air, maintain defensive integrity despite being surrounded. The air supply operation deserves detailed examination. The airlift requires coordinating hundreds of transport aircraft, protecting them from Japanese fighters, and delivering supplies to multiple airstrips under Japanese artillery fire. The RAF and USAAF deploy approximately 200 Dakota transport aircraft, 75 commando transports, and various other types. Fighter cover includes Spitfires and Hurricanes operating from Imphal's airfields and bases in India. The typical supply mission profile: Dakota aircraft load supplies at bases in Assam, fly 90 minutes over mountains to Imphal, descend to airstrip under potential artillery fire, offload in 10 to 15 minutes, load casualties for evacuation, take off immediately, return to Assam. Aircraft fly multiple missions daily. The operation continues regardless of weather, though monsoon conditions reduce sortie rates substantially. Japanese attempts to interdict the airlift prove ineffective. Japanese Army Air Force fighters, based in Burma and Thailand, conduct sporadic raids. The raids achieve minimal results against Spitfire fighter cover. Japanese Army anti-aircraft artillery, limited in quantity and quality, scores few hits. The airlift continues uninterrupted at tactically significant rates. Total supplies delivered by air to Imphal between April 1st and June 30th, approximately 19,000 tons. This includes 12,000 tons of ammunition, 4,000 tons of food, 2,000 tons of fuel, and 1,000 tons of medical supplies and miscellaneous equipment. Additionally, the aircraft evacuate approximately 13,000 wounded and 8,700 non-combatants. This logistical achievement enables 4th Corps to maintain defensive operations indefinitely. Japanese planning assumes British forces will exhaust supplies and collapse. Instead, British forces grow stronger as Japanese forces weaken from starvation and disease. The Japanese logistical situation deteriorates beyond sustainability by late May. 15th Army's supply lines, already tenuous, collapse entirely under monsoon rains and British interdiction. Food deliveries to forward units cease almost completely. Ammunition reaches frontline troops in quantities permitting only defensive operations. The human cost proves catastrophic. Soldiers starve slowly while fighting continuous defensive battles. Medical support becomes non-existent. Wounded die from infection, gangrene, or despair. Disease incapacitates thousands. Malaria, dysentery, typhus, scrub typhus, biri-biri. The division medical officers report disease casualty rates exceeding combat casualties by factors of 3 to 1. At 0800 hours on May 31st, 1944, Lieutenant General Mutaguchi receives reports from his 3 divisions. 31st Division, at Kohima, reports effective strength 3,200 from original 15,000. Combat effectiveness, minimal. Supply status, critical. Disease casualties, 5,400. Combat casualties, 3,800. Missing or deserted, approximately 2,600. 15th Division, at Imphal South Sector, Reports effective strength 8,000 from original 20,000. Combat effectiveness, marginal. Supply status, critical. Disease casualties, 7,200. Combat casualties, 3,100. Missing or deserted, 1,700. 33rd Division. At Imphal Southwest Sector. Reports effective strength 9,400 from original 20,000. Combat effectiveness, marginal. Supply status, critical. Disease casualties, 6,300. Combat casualties, 3,800. Missing or deserted, 500. Total 15th Army effective strength, approximately 20,600 from original 85,000. Total casualties, disease 31,900. Combat 17,700. Missing or deserted 4,800. These numbers indicate catastrophic force degradation unsustainable for continued operations. Mutaguchi requests permission to withdraw. Tokyo refuses. Imperial General Headquarters orders continued offensive operations until victory or annihilation. Mutaguchi complies, ordering renewed attacks despite obvious impossibility of success. The attacks proceed but achieve nothing. Soldiers too weak from starvation cannot advance effectively. Ammunition shortages prevent sustained fire support. Artillery, lacking shells. Fires only at highest priority targets. The offensives collapse within days, having consumed the last reserves of food and ammunition. By mid-June, Japanese forces transition from offensive to survival. Soldiers forage for anything edible: grass, leaves, bark, insects, carrion. Cases occur of soldiers eating their dead comrades. Though official records understate this practice, the desperation proves complete. Men who marched into India as soldiers of the Emperor now fight simply to survive one more day. British forces, recognizing Japanese weakness, transition to offensive operations. The strategy: methodical advance, pushing Japanese forces back along their approach routes while destroying them piecemeal. Artillery and air power provide massive firepower advantage. Tanks, operating where terrain permits, destroy Japanese positions immune to infantry assault. Supply, sustained by continuous airlift, enables operations limited only by terrain and weather. The advance from Imphal toward the Chindwin River begins June 22nd. 4th Corps attacks southward and eastward, clearing Japanese positions systematically. Progress proves slow due to monsoon rains transforming tracks into quagmires. But Japanese resistance, while occasionally fierce, proves increasingly disorganized as units disintegrate from casualties and desertion. The Kohima to Imphal Road, closed since early April, reopens June 22nd, when 2nd British Division advancing south from Kohima links with 5th Indian Division advancing north from Imphal. The junction occurs at milestone 192, 30 miles south of Kohima. The road opening permits ground resupply supplementing the airlift, further strengthening British logistics. Japanese forces, ordered to hold positions until death, increasingly disobey these orders. Entire units withdraw without authorization. Soldiers abandon equipment and walk eastward, seeking safety. The retreat becomes a catastrophe exceeding the operational defeat. Men too weak to walk die beside trails. Disease incapacitates thousands more. Medical support proves non-existent. The march back to Burma becomes a death march, killing more than combat did. At 0900 hours on July 22nd, 31st Division, withdrawing from Kohima area, reaches Ukrul, a village 60 miles southeast of Kohima. Division effective strength, approximately 1,300 men able to walk. An additional 800 wounded travel on improvised stretchers. Medical personnel, 4 doctors, 12 orderlies. Supplies, none. The division, which crossed into India with over 15,000 men 3 months earlier, now resembles a refugee column more than military unit. Captain Minami, the veterinary officer who reported horse consumption in April, keeps a diary through the retreat. July 24th entry reads, "Found Private Tanaka dead beside trail this morning. He walked with us yesterday, talking about his home in Hokkaido. During the night he simply stopped breathing. We buried him where he lay. No time for ceremony. 20 more died today. The monsoon rain never stops. Everyone has malaria or dysentery or both. I have both. Still walking. Don't know why." This experience, repeated across thousands of soldiers in 3 divisions, transforms the operational failure into humanitarian catastrophe. The Japanese Army loses approximately 53,000 men from 15th Army during Operation U-Go. Combat deaths account for perhaps 13,000. Disease, starvation, and exhaustion kill approximately 30,000. Another 10,000 evacuate to hospitals, most dying subsequently from disease or malnutrition complications. British Indian casualties total approximately 16,000. 4,000 killed, 12,000 wounded evacuated. The disparity reflects artillery and air superiority, better logistics, and defensive advantages. But the numbers prove severe regardless. 14th Army loses trained soldiers it can ill afford, particularly infantry specialists and junior leaders. The battle's strategic consequences exceed the tactical results. Japan's invasion of India fails completely. The 15th Army, one of Japan's premier combat forces, ceases to exist as effective organization. Japanese offensive capability in Burma collapses. British 14th Army, having stopped the Japanese offensive, transitions to offensive operations driving toward Rangoon. More broadly, the battle demonstrates that Japanese forces can be defeated in sustained combat. Earlier in the war, Japanese troops achieved seemingly impossible victories through superior tactics, training, and morale. Kohima and Imphal proved these advantages insufficient against well-led forces with material superiority. The myth of Japanese invincibility, already damaged at Midway and Guadalcanal, shatters completely. Individual stories from the battle illustrate the human experience. Private John Harmon, who died attacking a machine gun position, receives Victoria Cross posthumously. The citation notes his complete disregard for personal safety. What it doesn't mention, Harmon volunteered for the action after watching 3 friends die to the same position. He acted not from mindless courage, but calculated determination that the position must be eliminated. Captain David Menzies, the medical officer who operated while wounded, survives the battle. He evacuates to India in mid-May, suffering from infected shrapnel wounds and exhaustion. He refuses evacuation earlier despite his wounds, stating that the other wounded need him. After recovery, he returns to duty, serves through the Burma campaign, and earns the Military Cross for service at Meiktila in 1945. Post-war, he practices medicine in Scotland until retirement, never speaking publicly about Kohima. Lieutenant Shosaku Kamiyama, the Japanese officer who attacked the tennis court, survives the retreat to Burma. He reaches friendly lines in August, weighing 89 pounds. Having lost 62 pounds during the campaign, he spends 4 months in hospital recovering from malaria, dysentery, and malnutrition. He returns to duty in December 1944 and dies during the defense of Mandalay in March 1945. His diary, recovered post-war, contains no heroic sentiments. The final entry, dated February 1945, reads, "Still alive. Still fighting. Don't know why." These personal narratives, multiplied across thousands of participants, reveal the battle's true character, not the clean tactical diagrams of staff colleges, but the intimate savagery of men fighting at arm's length for objectives whose significance they often don't understand. The tennis court at Kohima, where soldiers died for control of a recreational facility, epitomizes this disconnect between tactical necessity and human absurdity. The tennis court still exists. The Commonwealth War Graves Commission maintains the Kohima War Cemetery on the site of the former battlefield. The cemetery contains 1,420 graves, British, Indian, Nepalese, and West African soldiers who died during the fighting. The tennis court, restored to its pre-war configuration, sits peacefully below the Deputy Commissioner's bungalow site. A monument stands at the cemetery entrance bearing the inscription, "When you go home, tell them of us and say, for your tomorrow. We gave our today." This epitaph, attributed to Kohima, though its origins traced to Simonides of Seos, captures the sacrifice without glorifying it. The soldiers who died here fought not for grand ideals, but for immediate tactical necessities. Hold this position. Take that bunker. Survive until tomorrow. The cumulative effect of these tactical actions determined strategic outcomes, but the men fighting rarely saw beyond the immediate objective. The Japanese dead, approximately 6,000 at Kohima alone, received no similar memorialization. Japanese practice discouraged elaborate war graves. The bodies, where recoverable, received cremation and ashes returned to Japan. Most remained unrecovered, buried in hasty graves or left where they fell. The jungle reclaimed them quickly. Today, Occasional hikers report finding remains, bone fragments, rusted equipment, spent cartridge cases. These artifacts, gradually eroding, represent the only physical traces of thousands who died in the hills around Kohima. The comparison proves uncomfortable but necessary. British and Indian dead receive maintained graves and formal remembrance. Japanese dead vanish into jungle and memory. Both sides suffered terribly. Both sides fought with courage. Both sides experienced the same monsoon rain, the same mud, the same terror of close combat. But history, written by survivors and victors, remembers them differently. The battle's designation as the Stalingrad of the East contains truth and exaggeration. Stalingrad involved millions of troops, lasted months, and destroyed an entire German field army. Kohima and Imphal, engaged perhaps 180,000 troops total, lasted 4 months, and destroyed one Japanese army. The scale differs substantially, but the comparison holds in character. Both battles represented desperate defense against invasion. Both occurred at the limits of logistics. Both featured savage close-quarters combat. Both inflicted catastrophic casualties on attackers. Both reversed strategic momentum after Stalingrad. Germany could not sustain offensive operations in Russia after Kohima Imphal. Japan could not sustain offensive operations in India or Burma. The battles also share the characteristic of being fought by exhausted, often poorly supplied troops on both sides, enduring conditions that approach the limits of human endurance. At Stalingrad, soldiers fought in rubble through Russian winter. At Kohima Imphal, soldiers fought in jungle through monsoon season. Different environments, equivalent misery. The strategic lessons emerged gradually. Japanese planners learned that offensive operations without sustainable logistics fail regardless of tactical skill or soldier determination. British planners learned that defensive operations with air superiority and supply could defeat Japanese attacks once considered unstoppable. Both armies learned that jungle terrain, while challenging, could be conquered through persistence and proper preparation. The battle's legacy shapes subsequent operations. British 14th Army, having stopped the Japanese invasion, drives through Burma toward Rangoon. The lessons learned at Kohima and Imphal regarding logistics, air support, and combined arms operations enable successful offensive campaigns in even more challenging terrain. Japanese forces, shattered by their defeat, never recover operational effectiveness. The retreat from Imphal becomes pursuit to the Chindwin, then pursuit to Mandalay, then pursuit to Rangoon. Japanese forces defend but cannot counterattack effectively. Individual veterans carry different lessons. Those who survived learned that they could endure conditions previously considered impossible. They fought for weeks on minimal food, minimal water, minimal ammunition. They watched friends die from wounds minor in peacetime but fatal in the field. They killed enemies at ranges where facial expressions registered clearly. They survived through combination of skill, courage, and luck. These experiences, rarely discussed publicly, shaped lives. Post-war accounts from veterans consistently note the difficulty of explaining Kohima to those who weren't there. How do you describe fighting for 2 weeks over a tennis court? How do you explain the normalcy of sleeping 50 yards from enemy soldiers trying to kill you? How do you convey the smell of tropical jungle mixed with decomposing bodies and cordite? You don't. Mostly, the veterans returned to civilian life and resumed normal existence as best they could. Some thrived. Many struggled. A few never truly returned. Their minds remaining in the Naga Hills fighting battles long concluded. The psychological casualties, uncounted in official statistics, exceeded physical casualties substantially according to post-war psychiatric studies. The battle's material legacy proves minimal. The battlefields, returned to civilian use, show little evidence of combat. The tennis court looks like any tennis court. The roads run where they always ran. The ridges hold vegetation, not bunkers. Only the cemetery and scattered memorials mark what occurred here. But the human legacy persists in family histories and regimental traditions. The Royal West Kent Regiment, which held Kohima Ridge for 14 days, maintains the battle as central to regimental identity. The Assam Regiment, the Assam Rifles. Various Indian Army units preserve the memory through annual commemorations. Japanese veterans, fewer each year, gather at memorials to remember comrades who never returned. This collective memory, fragmentary and fading, preserves what official histories cannot: the individual experience of extreme combat, the fear, the exhaustion, the brief moments of black humor, the longer periods of terror, the bonds formed under fire, the guilt of survival, the nightmares that persist decades after. Captain Yevgeny Preobrazhensky bombed Berlin. Lieutenant Shosaku Kamiyama attacked the tennis court at Kohima. Both flew or fought in obsolescent equipment under impossible conditions. Preobrazhensky survived. Kamiyama died. The difference lay largely in chance. This randomness, the arbitrary nature of survival in combat, proves perhaps the most difficult lesson. Soldiers want to believe that skill, courage, or divine favor protect them. Experience teaches otherwise. Good soldiers die from random artillery shells. Cowards survive entire campaigns through luck. Heroic actions result in death as often as medals. The universe provides no justice, only results. The Battle of Kohima and Imphal crystallized this reality for thousands of soldiers on both sides. They fought savagely for months across impossible terrain and brutal conditions. Some survived, many didn't. The survivors carry memories that don't fade and experiences that can't be explained. The dead rest in graves marked or unmarked, remembered or forgotten. When you go home, tell them of us and say, "For your tomorrow. We gave our today." The epitaph captures sacrifice without explaining necessity. The soldiers at Kohima gave their todays. Whether those todays purchased tomorrow's worth having remains a question each generation answers differently. The battle stopped Japanese invasion of India. It destroyed Japan's 15th Army. It reversed strategic momentum in Burma. It proved British Indian forces could defeat Japanese forces in sustained combat. These outcomes mattered immensely in 1944. 80 years later, the battle remains largely unknown outside specialist circles. The Stalingrad of the East faded from memory as other battles claimed attention. The tennis court sits peaceful. The ridge grows green. The dead remain buried. The survivors grow fewer each year. But the battle happened. 85,000 Japanese soldiers marched into India, believing they would capture Imphal and Kohima, sever the supply line to China, and perhaps trigger Indian revolt. They failed completely. Approximately 53,000 never returned. The survivors staggered back to Burma broken in body and spirit. 100,000 British Indian troops defended Imphal and surrounding positions, supplied entirely by air, and defeated the Japanese offensive. Approximately 16,000 became casualties, but held every critical position. They transitioned from desperate defense to methodical counteroffensive, driving Japanese forces back to Burma and beyond. The battles of Kohima and Imphal represented the moment when British Indian forces stopped Japanese expansion permanently, not through brilliant maneuver or superior tactics, but through stubborn defense, overwhelming firepower, and logistical superiority. The savage jungle fighting produced no swift, decisive victory, only grinding attrition that destroyed attacking forces, while defenders, supplied from the air, maintained combat power. That grinding attrition, fought across ridgelines and through monsoon rain, consumed approximately 69,000 lives. Some died heroically. Most died ordinary deaths in extraordinary circumstances. All contributed to the cumulative result. Invasion stopped. Momentum reversed. Strategic initiative transferred. The tennis court at Kohima, where Lieutenant Kamiyama died and Private Harmon earned his Victoria Cross, symbolizes this battle perfectly. An absurd objective, fought over savagely, determining nothing strategically but everything to those fighting for it. When armies meet in close combat, the grand strategy reduces to immediate tactical necessity. Hold this position. Take that bunker. Survive until tomorrow. At Kohima and Imphal, enough men survived enough tomorrows to change the war's course. The Stalingrad of the East earned its name through equivalent brutality and comparable strategic significance. The soldiers who fought there, British, Indian, Nepalese, West African, and Japanese, experienced combat at its most savage. They endured, fought, and died in obscurity that persists decades after. This account preserves their experience inadequately. Words cannot convey the reality, but words remain our only tool for remembering battles fought 80 years ago by men now mostly dead. When you go home, tell them of us. Tell them we fought for months in jungle and monsoon. Tell them we held impossible positions against determined attack. Tell them we died for reasons we often didn't understand. Tell them our sacrifice mattered, even if they don't remember why. For your tomorrow. We gave our today at Kohima and Imphal. In the spring and summer of 1944, approximately 69,000 men gave everything. The tomorrows they purchased included independence for India, defeat for Japan, and obscurity for themselves. History remembers battles and forgets soldiers. But the soldiers made history. Their forgotten sacrifice deserves remembering.